Tywin was a ruthless tactician, a man whose very presence commanded respect and fear across the Seven Kingdoms. But when he was killed by his own son, Tyrion, it didn't just end his life. It set off a chain reaction that stripped House Lannister of its power, allies, and influence. The first reason for the Lannister collapse is pretty straightforward. There was simply no one like Tywin to replace him. As the true force behind House Lannister, he wasn't just a leader, he was a master strategist. Everything he did, from crushing rebellions to negotiating powerful alliances, kept the family's enemies in check. Tywin wasn't afraid to use fear and intimidation, and he'd worked tirelessly to rebuild House Lannister's reputation after his father, Tydos, nearly ran it into the ground. When Tywin died, that carefully constructed empire was left without its foundation. His children, Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion, each had their strengths, but none of them had the cunning or the control Tywin possessed. This void was the beginning of the end. Now, after Tywin's death, Cersei took over as the most powerful Lannister, and this is where things really started to go wrong. Unlike her father, Cersei was impulsive and ruled from a place of paranoia. She was obsessed with surpassing Tywin, but she lacked his patience and his long-term vision. For example, she empowered the Faith Militant, a move Tywin would have never allowed, thinking she could control them. But the Faith quickly turned on her, imprisoning her and undermining the Lannister name in ways Tywin had always managed to avoid. She also alienated the Tyrells, one of their strongest allies, just because of her own insecurities and need for control. Cersei's actions brought a storm upon the Lannisters, and without Tywin's iron grip, she couldn't keep it from tearing the family apart. Speaking of alliances, Tywin had built a network of strategic relationships that extended beyond Westeros. The Lannisters didn't stand alone. They were held up by a coalition of allies Tywin had carefully cultivated. But Tywin's death sent shockwaves through these alliances, causing many houses to rethink their loyalties. The Tyrells began plotting their own moves, and the Martells of Dorne were biding their time for vengeance. Even within the capital, whispers of rebellion grew, and Cersei's inability to keep the family's friends close meant their enemies grew bolder. The Lannisters became increasingly isolated, no longer the unbeatable force Tywin had made them. Another factor that accelerated the Lannisters' collapse was their financial decline. Tywin had managed their wealth like a master. He restored the family's gold mines, built a fortune, and carefully maintained ties with the Iron Bank. But after Tywin's death, those gold mines ran dry, and the Lannisters were suddenly in heavy debt to the Iron Bank. Cersei, with her lack of financial acumen, ignored this growing issue. The Lannisters were living off past wealth while amassing debt. The very foundation of their power, money, was slipping away, and Cersei's decisions only worsened it. This financial decline left them vulnerable and exposed in ways Tywin would have never allowed. Now there's Tyrion. Tywin's relentless cruelty toward him set the stage for one of the Lannisters' most damaging betrayals. When Tyrion escaped and fled to Daenerys, he not only removed a brilliant mind from the Lannister arsenal, but also offered his insight to their enemy. Tyrion knew the weaknesses of his family and used them to aid Daenerys in her campaign. Tywin's legacy of cruelty toward Tyrion came back to haunt House Lannister in full force. The Lannisters lost a critical player to the opposing team, and Tyrion's knowledge of their vulnerabilities was instrumental in Daenerys' success. Finally, Tywin's rule was held together by fear, authority, and an unyielding code of discipline. He was the only one who could keep his children and his bannermen in line. But with him gone, the Lannisters lacked that central authority figure, and their family's unity unraveled. Tyrion's resentment, Cersei's hunger for control, and Jaime's conflicted loyalty all boiled over. Tywin had been the glue holding them together, and without him, there was no one left to keep the family in check. The consequences were swift, as House Lannister became a shadow of its former self. Tywin Lannister's death didn't just end a life, it shattered an empire. His absence left the Lannisters without leadership, without allies, and without the stability that had made them Westeros' most feared family. House Lannister may have continued to exist after Tywin, but it would never be the same mighty force. So, what does this tell us? In Westeros, power can be built on wealth, fear, and alliances. But without a leader like Tywin to keep it all in line, even the most powerful house can crumble. If you enjoyed this breakdown of House Lannister's collapse and want to hear more thrilling insights from the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts below. Did you think Tywin's death would impact the Lannisters this drastically? Until next time, this is Rocky signing off. Stay curious, stay bold, and remember, in the Game of Thrones, every decision counts.